Hey, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of the Risk Matrix with James Junkin and myself, Dr. Martin. Hey, James.
Hey, roll tide. Good to be here.
Roll Tide, baby. It's college football season. I know you're super happy. And we're going to take some time out of that to talk today about the OSHA top 10 violations that just came out. And you told me that they announced them at the National Safety
They
Council.
did.
Okay. And so I want to delve into that with you, but let's first have a word from, we all know that we're powered by Veriforce, but we have a sponsor, and sponsor is Veriforce Worker Pass. This episode of the Risk Matrix is powered by Veriforce, sponsored by Veriforce Worker Pass. The Worker Pass is a comprehensive worker level compliance management solution. Using advanced technology and seamless integration, Veriforce Worker Pass gives companies the power to establish worker identity and qualifications, as well as monitoring compliance status with a level of precision and efficiency never experienced in the industry. The importance of a compliance at the worker level cannot be overstated. At the heart of Veriforce Worker Pass is a refined approach to compliance management that accommodates the needs of a diverse supply chain. To learn how Veriforce Worker Pass can help you achieve supply chain and contractor compliance, reduce risks, and ensure workers go home safe from high hazard jobs, visit veriforce.com/solutions/worksite-management. And there you go, James. Veriforce Worker Pass is giving us the boost today. Let's talk about the OSHA top 10 violations.
Well, before we get going, I would be remiss if I did not say something about the survivors and the victims of Hurricane Helene. You know, having been through storms like that, that is a life-changing event from which some may not recover. So our thoughts and prayers are to all those affected in the States by Hurricane Helene. We wish you the best here from the Risk Matrix. I've got some things on LinkedIn that I posted about tips from someone who's walked this path after hurricane destruction on some things that you should do in dealing with FEMA, your insurance company, getting power to your house, using portable generators and things of that nature. So just check it out there on LinkedIn, and our best wishes go with you.
Right on. Agree with you. So let's talk about the OSHA top 10, James. This comes out every year. And I think NSC announces it usually at their fall conference, like they did this time.
Absolutely. OSHA came, they spoke, the head of OSHA to the Congress that was assembled there at the National Safety Council, and they brought out their top 10, and really there are no surprises on the top 10 list. If we took the top 10 list from last year, it'd be very similar. All that really changes in the top 10 list when we go through there is the order in which you find certain violations. And as we go through this today, you know, OSHA regulations are the law. They're there to protect the workforce. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about serious injuries, fatalities, how we're going to go about on work sites preventing serious injuries and fatalities. You can start right here. You don't need a complicated safety management system of frankly, Dr. Martin, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. I'm about tired of having the debate of all these different safety theories and stuff. This is simple compliance. We can't move on to that till we get simple compliance down, right? So if you want to bring your workers home safe from high hazard jobs, focus on this OSHA top 10 list that begins with shocking fall protection.
Fall protection, right? Falls in construction. Falls are the number one construction injury every year, almost, right?
Almost every year, it's the number one cause of injury in construction. Some years it's not the number one most frequently cited, but it's definitely one of those hazards. I was talking with a client this morning, very large client. They've had, in the last 3 weeks, 3 people fall off ladders. People falling off all sorts of types of elevated work platforms. You know, I don't want to seem frustrated, but I think as safety professionals, we all ought to be a little bit frustrated that we keep doing these things over and over and over
Over
again.
and over again. Right.
Now,
Right.
one of the things I wanted to ask you, when your site inspections, what do you normally find related to fall protection that's citable?
Most common,
Okay.
ladder use, 100% ladder use, right? And then beyond that, just improper use of the fall protection gear, right? That people just put it on and they think they make them invincible. But what you really need to do is all the calculations and all the thinking behind anchor, harness, connector, and all those different things. And you also have to know what you're tying off to, right? And beyond that, James, identifying the hazard, right? This will go right up your alley, right? Identifying the hazard is probably the biggest thing in fall protection. Just now, before I was talking, you were naming all of these different things where falls can happen, right? Slips and trips are falls.
Right.
Elevated work platforms, steel erection, uh, any type of
Roofing.
work at heights, right?
Any type
Roofing.
of work at heights. But here's one that I see that's very common is we have fall protection. We have a policy. We did some online training. We may have done some on-the-job training on how to put on our full body harness, but our connecting device is not the right connecting device. I see more people tied off with shock absorbing lanyards at heights that will not safely allow that shock absorbing lanyard to deploy, and you will hit the ground, right?
Right.
So
Right.
if I'm doing site inspections as a safety professional, the fact that they're tied off is really meaningless if they're tied off improperly, right?
Right. Right.
And
You
I
got
think
to do the math.
you
You
got to
got
do
to
the
do the
math.
math.
A shock absorbing lanyard will stretch out to as much as 18 and a half feet. So if I'm with a 6-foot lanyard with a shock absorbing pack on there and I'm working at 12 feet, I'm going to hit the ground. I see
Right.
this all the time, all the time. So as a safety professional, it's incumbent upon us when we do site inspections, one, to make sure we're tied off, but are we tied off using the proper device?
Right.
I am a huge fan of self-retracting lifelines. If James was king for the day, the shock absorbing lanyard would go the way of the dodo bird.
Okay. Well, let me add to that. If I was the queen of this of all sites, I would have ladder stands. Why? Right? Because we work off of ladders all the time in construction in all industries. We work off of ladders and we don't have 3 points of contact and we're leaning to the side and we're not placing the ladder correctly. And so if I were in charge, there'd be more ladder stands. There'd be more work platforms. There'd be more
Absolutely.
scaffolding.
And the other thing I see it's sort of related to this is fall protection, is we don't understand the difference between fall protection and fall restraint. When working for mobile elevated working platforms, I see this all the time, right? We're inside a scissor lift with a full body harness on. That's good, right?
Yep.
But we're tied off to that scissor lift and connected that scissor lift again with a 6-foot lanyard that's shock absorbing. That's not what that's meant for. You need fall restraint to keep you inside of the basket. Now, if you just get rid of these packs altogether and go with a self-retracting lifeline, it will serve the same purpose, right? So
Right.
hazards are best controlled in the planning of the work, right? So when we're planning the work, if we don't have the opportunity to grab the wrong restraining device, to use the wrong restraining device, we've taken that out of the equation. Maybe we can get some of these citations down when we start talking about fall protection in construction.
And start looking, there are a lot more manufacturers of fall protection equipment, right? Fall prevention, fall restraint equipment, and self-retracting lifelines, the love of your life. they're not cost prohibitive anymore, right? They used to be pretty high in price, but there are a lot of manufacturers, really good manufacturers, that manufacture at a decent cost. So there's no excuse. There's no excuse. So let's move on, because we got
Let's
10
go,
of these
yeah,
things.
let's go to
Number
HAZCOM.
two, number two, hazard communication. Hazard communication. All right, what say you, James?
Hazard communication ought to be the easiest thing in the world to comply with, right? We have to train our workers on the physical and health hazards they're going to encounter when dealing with chemicals. It comes with a big old sheet, a safety data sheet that tells me what the physical and health hazards are. But commonly what I find when we come to hazard communication is either we don't have a current safety data sheet,
Yes.
or we have a safety data sheet, but that safety data sheet is not in a language that workers can understand and comprehend, meaning we have English produced safety data sheets, right? But our workers may not read or comprehend English very well.
Or we have the safety data sheet and we don't use it, right? I mean, my big thing with people on site is, if you're going to be working with a chemical or a substance, during the day or during the week, or for a specific task, that's a perfect opportunity to review that safety data sheet in the toolbox talk or in the JSA. All that stuff should be looked at before you work with the substance, before you put yourself in harm's way. So HAZCOM, it seems like a no-brainer.
It really should be a no-brainer. Having an inventory list is part of the HAZCOM standard, knowing what chemicals are on site. Certainly if you're a contractor, whether you're a general contractor or subcontractor, and you're bringing chemicals on to a hiring client site, you need to inform them of that what type of chemicals you do. And see, a lot of this doesn't matter till there's an emergency. And then we don't know what you have.
Right.
We have a fire, we have an exposure. One of the things I like to teach in my HAZCOM classes is, if we have a chemical exposure and the fire department shows up and they understand that you're doused with this chemical, right? They've got to decon you before they carry you to the hospital.
That's right.
You cannot roll up into the emergency room doused in all these chemicals and expose other people. So we need to know what you were exposed with so we can get workers treated quickly. There's a lot of technological resources out there. People keep safety data sheets online now. Let's make sure, this is another one I have, that the safety data sheet for that chemical is for that chemical, not a generic one.
Yeah. And when you say online, that it's accessible, right? Because that's a big thing in the standard, is that the SDS have to be accessible. So if you're out there just counting beans and putting safety data sheets into some kind of online repository, you better make sure that the workers can get to that and the supervisors can get to that to get the information out.
I love technology, and technology has made our lives a lot easier. It's allowing me and you to film this episode, the risk matrix, and technology is going to get this information out there. Hopefully some people that find this interesting, right? But where I still am a paper person, this is just James, okay, is with the safety data sheets, because in the event of an emergency, time is of the essence. I want to be able to go to the book, pull the safety data sheet out, and give it to the first responder so they know what to do, what this person's been exposed to. So when they get to the emergency room, they can give it to the doctor. Yep. Time is of the essence.
I mean, I love that.
Let me send you an email of this safety data sheet. What's your email address in? I'm over there.
Yeah. I love the paper, right? I'm all about redundancy. Like, I think that there should be a paper binder, and maybe you can, if you really like the technology, keep it online too. A lot of people have apps on their phones that you can go to. NIOSH has an app. There's all kinds of, I think the NFPA has an app. You use what you got. But remember, this is also somewhere where we can bring in our knowledge of training, right? And how people learn. Different modalities, right? You can't put everything online if you have people who love paper. So make sure you know your audience, and you make sure that they can get what they need when they need it. Just like James says, if you want to grab a piece of paper and take it to the emergency room, you can. If you want to have it on your phone, just make sure you know how to use that technology.
Next
So I'm going to move on, James. You ready?
ladder.
Okay. This is a double dip. Okay. I'm going to say double dip number 3, number 4 on our number 1 fall protection, right? Because we're still in that fall category. So really, number 3 is ladders in construction and scaffolding in construction, right? And I'm pretty sure that they both have to do with falls, although they have some nuances of their own.
Right. You know, you're to inspect the ladder before you're using it. So again, hazards are best controlled in the design and planning of work. Number 1, why do we have a ladder? Ladders increase risk. How do I know that? It's number 3 on the most cited, right? So if you know, ladders should be used for access, right?
Not for work.
Not scaffolding is a work platform. Ladders give me access. Scaffolding is a work platform. So where I think you find a lot of this coming into play is it's a lot cheaper and less extensive to go out and use a ladder and work off that ladder to perform this task than it is to erect a scaffold. And we're going to get into scaffolding in a moment. But if you're having workers work off a ladder, you have a significant risk of them falling from that ladder. Significant risk.
So can I add something here? Because I've been going out to work sites where there are multi-employers and everybody has their ladders, right? And so when I walk through for an inspection, I'm like, whose ladder is that? Whose ladder is that? Whose ladder is that? Right? We're talking about exposure to the company, but also exposure to risk because people, if a ladder's there, they're prone to use the ladder, right?
Absolutely.
So I think in a multi-employer situation, you have to learn whose ladders are whose, move them around, put them away when you're done with them. Don't leave them all over the work site because it just increases the risk for everybody to have a citation related to a ladder, but more importantly, possible fall, right? Because
Absolutely.
if it's there, people are going to use it.
Absolutely. So again, back to the planning of the work. Okay. And I don't want to go through the entire standard when it comes to ladders. We understand everybody listening to this probably gets it. They need to be on a 4-to-1 slope. 3 feet of the ladder needs to extend above the elevated surface. You know,
It's tied or
tied
secured.
off at the top and secured. We all understand that from our OSHA 10, OSHA 30 for Veriforce, Safe Land Basic, Safe Land USA 2021 Basic, PEC Basic back in the day, the foundational classes that are out there. But what I find is we understand it, but sometimes we don't deploy it, right? It's quicker, grab a ladder, put up there. Now let's move on to scaffolding.
Okay.
All right.
Which I say again that 1, 3, and 4 are all related to work at heights and falls, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So think about it, people. Let's talk about scaffolding, James.
So scaffolding, I've seen some sketchy scaffolding in my day, right? Scaffolding is designed for us to work from, to perform tasks. You see scaffolding a lot in downstream chemical plants, refineries, any type of large plant operation.
Process safety facilities, yep.
When we're doing turnarounds, we're doing outages, and scaffolding needs to be designed and erected by qualified people.
And inspected.
We're going
right?
By competent persons.
By competent person.
And you know, this language issue that we have in safety, it drives me nuts because we use things to mean the same thing in our everyday language, but when we get into OSHA, we can't transfer that language into this because these words are legal terms. You won't be able to account. So a qualified person that's designing your scaffolding is a person that has education, training, experience. They're a subject matter expert on how to put this together. That's why
it's not always the safety person.
It's definitely
which
not
you'll find in a lot of plans.
Right. So what we typically see, at least in the South, in these downstream operations in oil and gas, are there companies that specialize that all they do is build and erect scaffolding. Right on.
Right on.
Because
let the people who know do.
Let the experts do. But then in your organization, you need a competent person that is inspecting the scaffolding and signing off on the tagging system that it has been
That's
inspected.
right.
Right? So what is a competent person? A competent person has been so designated by your company that has the ability to recognize existing and predictable hazards. And here's the second part of it, and the authority to take prompt corrective action. I like to think I'm a qualified person, but I'm not your competent person because I can take no action. I have no authority over your workers. And
Well, in a lot of cases too, James, if you don't know scaffolding, you're not a competent person, right? Because you're not going to know when to take action,
absolutely.
right?
So as a safety professional, we got to make sure that we have designated, and I prefer designated in writing,
I agree.
because the only time anybody's going to know how you designated your competent persons when somebody falls off, the scaffolding collapse, somebody gets seriously injured or killed, or you've damaged somebody's asset, right? So now we got to determine how we determine this person was competent.
OSHA's going to ask.
OSHA's going to ask, and I've seen them. They're doing a lot more programmed inspections here of late. You know, that might be another episode where we talk about the number of programmed inspections, which means you haven't done
Let's
anything.
do that.
They just show up and they're walking
Let's
around
do that.
your scaffolding. And so one of the first questions I would ask as a compliance officer is, who is your competent person for this scaffolding? Well, Fred over here is our supervisor.
You put it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean he's the competent person. I need to know who the competent person is. And when you can't enunciate who the competent person is, get out your checkbook.
Why? And why?
And why? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Look, scaffolding seems to be simple, but it's number 4 on the list out of all the things that OSHA can cite on out of those big old books.
They're citing it.
They're citing on scaffolding. So, you know, ladders give me access. Scaffolding is a work platform. If you're putting workers on scaffolding, you better have a inspection process, right?
Yep.
An inspection process, and that can be complicated when you have multiple employers who are using the same scaffolding.
That's right. Okay, number 5, powered industrial trucks. Okay, you and I both have done a lot of warehouse work, right? In the last several years, right? We've been in a lot of warehouses, and so I've seen a lot of really poor operation of powered industrial trucks, which include forklifts and telehandlers and a bunch of other classified motorized vehicles. So powered industrial trucks, what do I think? I've seen OSHA come in on those program inspections, walk over to a powered industrial truck and find lots of things wrong with it that a daily inspection would have solved, like tires, like seat belts, like fire extinguishers, like rollover protection, you know, you name it, right? So what I've seen is OSHA come in sight for things that make that vehicle unsafe. However, operation is also an issue. How do you train your workers?
Absolutely. A lot of the problems I find with powered industrial trucks, and I've assessed a lot of companies around powered industrial trucks in the last 6 months, right? Most, if not all, of their issues with powered industrial trucks comes back to training, right? Training. So
training and retraining and corrective action.
You know, what I find routinely is this. We watch some online e-learning. We got a certificate that says powered industrial truck at the top. And now we're out there working inside a warehouse or operating, you know, and when people think about powered industrial trucks from the general public standpoint, you're thinking about this small forklift. Man, there's some giant powered industrial trucks, right? Where if it hits you, it's not going to hurt because you're not going to be around to hurt.
Right.
You're just going to be gone. So I think where from a citation standpoint, all the things that you said are absolutely 100% true. And just getting into the training aspects of it, you need to be trained on the make and the model of the powered industrial truck that you're operating. E-learning can be a component of that, but there needs to also be a practical demonstration of how to operate it and a
Yep.
hands-on evaluation of
So
that.
I've had clients, I've gone in and I've audited their powered industrial truck program, and I've had them say, well, Johnny has a certificate to operate a powered industrial truck from his employer 2 employers ago, which to me means nothing, because you hit it right on the head. You need to be trained on the powered industrial trucks that you will be operating. You need to be trained on how they work. You need to be trained on the hazards. You need to be trained to inspect them and to know how to drive them, right? To
Absolutely.
operate under the rules, which is, certain speeds and you know, having backup alarms, and etc.
I was on the phone just today with someone, fellow safety professional, who is an owner, hiring client, and their contractors are having numbers and repeated numbers of powered industrial truck instances, forklift instances, hitting things. And they have a stand down, and the next shift, they hit the same thing over and over again. So, what's the issue here? Well, if you look at the incident reports, they all say this: the worker was complacent. Now, there's not a standard called complacent. We're all complacent. We all get distracted. This is this human factors thing of how you design the workplace. So if people make mistakes, it should not result in catastrophe. Now, at Mariner Golf, this is just me. So if you want to give me a bunch of emails, I'll get you on here and we can debate it, listeners, right? I'd love to debate this. I do not accept ever at Mariner Golf a root cause of complacency. It can be a causal factor, one of other causal factors, but that's not the only factor, because when we plan the work, people might be complacent. People might be distracted. Somebody might call somebody while they're backing the load off and they turn their head the other way. That doesn't mean they're bad people. That means they're human beings. So when we look at powered industrial trucks, you really have to look at the design of the workplace where these things are being operated in.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I can't even tell you. I've been in warehouses where the shelving units have sheared bolts, they attach to the floor, and the bolts are sheared off because people are operating with the forks at a height that shear the bolts off the shelving units, right? Making another hazard for people. So they're not paying attention, they're not reporting it, right? And they're causing an unsafe workplace in other manners because of the way they're operating the vehicle.
So some of it's planning, some of it's training, and
Some of it's culture. Some of it's organizational culture of
culture. Absolutely. Absolutely.
reporting what's going on. So we're getting long-winded here. Let's move on. Control of hazardous energy, number 6. It's always on there. Electrical safety, lockout, tagout.
Well,
What
even
say you?
beyond just electrical, lockout, tagout has got to be one of the easiest standards to implement, but one of the most misunderstood and one of the most dangerous when we don't implement it properly. Every person with the potential to be injured shall place a lock and or tag on each energy isolation device. Booyah. But I've seen all sorts just this past week. Hiring client has someone that's working on a system, if you will, to install components of a wireless access system, right? So these IT professionals, really good at their job, are not used to working with lockout tagout because they don't ever work with any hazardous energy. But where they're working, they can be exposed to hazardous energy.
That's right.
So what happened? The hiring client locked and tagged it out and thought the procedure was just to give them the key.
I got another instance, right? I have supervisors. I've seen supervisors lock out hazardous energy, not of electrical, but of other kind of pneumatic and other hydraulic energy and anything under pressure. And they've put a lock on it and then sent the workers in to work in the area that had been locked out.
And just tell me when you're done.
Tell me when you're done and I'll remove the
So
lock.
all
That's
of
trust.
those, these last two, all go back to training, training, training. Listen, you're going to get me fired up.
No, I'm not. I'm just
Okay?
going to say it goes back to
There's
training, but it also
all
goes back
this
to talking about the
awareness,
work before you start.
this awareness level training, and we want to operate safety management systems on the cheap. So we find a course that has that in the title, lockout, tagout, right? And we spend 2 minutes and 56 seconds in lockout, tagout, and then wonder why we have all these in. We could spend, I literally think we could spend a month's worth of episodes talking about energy isolation horror stories that we've been involved with.
Right.
You
And
know,
different nuances and
different
nuances of
nuances. But it comes back to training. It comes back to
Right.
training. Now, it also comes back to the periodic inspection. We did a whole episode about periodic inspections, right? And
Right.
lockout, tagout. You need to go out there and inspect the employees actually performing lockout, tagout to one of the elements
Verify.
is to see if verify their training. The next is verify the procedure. Are they following the procedure? Right? Is the procedure
Have they discussed the procedure? I mean, I'm going to go back to, if you're going to be doing something where there's energy isolation, whatever the energy source is, right? Before you start that work and before you initiate lockout, tagout, what does the work entail and who is exposed and who needs to be involved in the lockout, tagout procedure?
I've always said I'd hate to be the lockout, tagout coordinator in a process safety plant where you got 3,000 workers coming in. You're idling processes. Sometimes you've got other processes still running. You've got to do double blocks and bleeds and all these things. It's super complicated, right? And a
Yep.
lot of that evolves around this energy isolation concept. So for the sake of time, I'll just say this. All of that starts with training. It starts with
It also starts with design of the process system, right? What does the system entail? Where are your energy sources? How are you going to handle them? And I'm going to put a plug in here for some smaller companies because I know they're probably in a refinery or big process safety plant that they can't do this. But a lot of companies now go to procedures that are laminated and they go right on the equipment and tell you exactly how to do it. I think it's a wonderful idea, but it also doesn't stop you from discussing the work and ensuring that those procedures are correct.
Absolutely. And I'll say this, this is back to the hierarchy of controls and controlling hazards in the planning of the work. If you are a engineer listening to us, listen to me. Simply turning one valve wrong should not result in a disaster. Okay? Human beings are going to human being. That's why it's on the top 10 list. It's number 6, right? Number 6. Some years it's number 4, some it's number 8. It's always on there.
It's always there.
Right? So obviously we got a problem, and I think some of it comes back to how we design systems, and it also comes back to how we train workers. We're looking for a course that's as short as possible that has that in the name. Like,
what is the content?
What
is the content and is it sufficient?
And is it sufficient? So let's move to another one. Another pet peeve.
Number seven, respiratory protection. Here we go. You're going to get fired up again.
Respiratory.
How many times have you seen a really long respiratory protection program that somebody actually took probably right from the OSHA website and which you can do, And did they give you all the information? You plug in the names, you plug in whatever, and you know, somebody gets assigned an administrator that might not be might not even know they're the administrator of the respiratory
Yeah.
protection program.
Yeah.
And then
Lot.
we call it good. Then we call it good. Everybody gets respirators. And what are the citations you think that come with this?
Normally, I would say the citation number one comes probably back to improper wearing. OSHA sees them wearing the respirator. Is the wrong respirator for the hazard, meaning particularly related to air purifying respirators, right?
Training and medical surveillance.
Medical surveillance is one of them. They don't have a current medical evaluation in accordance with the appendix to the respiratory protection standard. They're fit testing. I've seen this so many times. How many times, right? We fit test people so many, enough that like I want to smack people with a respirator when I see this, right? There's a requirement because, you know, I do a lot of my work in the oil and gas industry. You need an H2S card and you need a fit test card. If you're going to expose workers above 10 parts per million, or certainly above potentially the ideal H and H2S of 100 ppm, the only respirator you can wear is supplied air, right? So they'll say you need a fit test card to come on our site, but they're fit test them in a 3M 6100, 6200, 6300 half mask particulate respirator using irritant smoke. Okay. Right. You cannot listen, folks. You cannot fit test an SCBA using anything but a quantitative fit test. Port account. Now there are 3 other protocols you could use, but the one that's most likely and the cheapest, most economical, and the best is use a port account machine. But do you know how many people walk around in the oil and gas industry with fit test cards that are not designed for the respirator they may have to wear in the event of the emergency? So respiratory protection's got a lot of nuances to it. We got popularized a lot. A lot of people looked at this during COVID. Hey, guess what? If I'm going to issue an N95 mask, right?
Yep.
Someone
and you can buy it at the hardware store, as we all know,
is a respirator according to OSHA and requires to be fit tested. So if you don't think, if you're listening to me, that you can't fit test a N95 respirator,
there's a procedure for that.
Go to YouTube fit test 3M N95 respirator. They'll show you how to do it.
And it says it right in the regulation that it has to be done.
Has to be done.
So I want to kind of shift this a little bit and say, okay, number 7. Before I said, look, we had fall protection number 1, we had ladders number 3, we had scaffolding number 4, which are all fall protection. Respiratory protection actually leads us back up to number 2, which is HAZCOM, right? Not knowing what you're being exposed to at what levels so that you can put appropriate respiratory protection in place, right? And I would say that's where you start.
You know, for us, working under air is easy. Okay. Where I think it gets complicated is now when we've got chemicals where we're using air purifying respirators and not supplied air. We got to match the right cartridge, the right filter for the hazard. That requires some training. We have to have cartridge change out schedules. You know, there's a lot goes into implementing a respiratory protection program when you're using air purifying respirators. But guess what's next on the list?
You know, here we go, right? I mean, I'm drawing all these parallels. Number 8, fall protection training. We're back to number 1, fall protection, construction. Number 3, ladders, construction, scaffolding, construction. All these things are work at heights. And guess what? Fall protection training. And we talked about this when we talked about the other things above, that training is really key to know how to work at heights and what equipment you need.
Training is difficult. Okay. Training takes time. You know what else is difficult and takes time? When somebody falls. And somebody
falls. That's right.
I've said it before on this show. I'm going to say it again. Mitigation is a lot cheaper than abatement. You're going to train these
Bet.
workers post-incident, right? OSHA's going to make you do it. And if you don't do it, they're going to give you another citation for failure to abate. And if you don't abate it,
Right.
then they'll give you a willful citation and come in and you know, basically you're getting to be out of business. So you're going to do this to begin with. But this, where I think this, what's happening is, even in companies that are doing the training, they're not doing the right training. And I try to say, look, I'm from Alabama and I'm from the country. Let's use some country common sense here, right? I'm brand new to this company. This is my first job in construction. Do you think I feel comfortable after I watched a 15-minute video about fall protection? Here, bro, grab this personal fall arrest system, put it on, and go ye therefore and work. And for God's sake, don't fall.
Train me on the hazards that I'm going to see in the course of my work.
Absolutely.
Training, the most effective training relates to the work that the worker's going to do and how they're going to do it. So if you're going to do fall protection training, make sure it relates to the work at heights that you're going to do on your job sites or within your course of work on, you know, as you move along through
And
your
it
career.
also needs to be specific on how you're going to protect this worker. Remember, most of the training you're going to get from some of the big box training companies is generic fall protection training, personal fall arrest system, shock absorbing lanyard, 6 feet above, behind, all that. I don't want to diminish that. But what if I'm working with a safety net system? What if I'm working with a safety monitor system? Well, you know, there are a lot of different ways to secure people. And sometimes in construction and working in plants, we have to come up with a very unique fall protection plan. I remember one time I got called from the Smithsonian Institute that wanted me to help devise a fall protection plan for the workers who go out and dust all of those airplane exhibits that are up hundreds of feet in the air, suspended from the ceiling, right? Somebody's got to go out there and dust those things. So
Somebody
that
dust the space shuttle?
no, not the space shuttle, but you'd have like the SR-71 Blackbird in there, a lot of World War II.
I believe they have a space shuttle in the Smithsonian too.
Do they now? Well, when
I think so.
they called me, we were still flying the space shuttle.
Okay, all right, all right, all right.
So it wasn't a museum piece yet. But
What?
point being, fall protection training needs to be unique to what we're doing, right?
Train
And
me on the hazards of the work that I'm going to be performing.
just because I have a certificate that says James Junkin fall protection training on it doesn't mean I've been adequately trained. All right.
Totally agree.
Let's go to number 9. Eye and face protection. You know what this is? We're just either not assigned it or we're not wearing it.
Or we're not wearing it. That's right. Or we haven't, again, it goes back to hazard identification, right? Welding, cutting, brazing, grinding, any types of things where there might be flying objects, you might be by using saws. I see it all the time. It's I think less that it's not provided. I think a lot of firms do provide it. I think a lot of people know they should be wearing their safety glasses, but they don't. Or again, in the welding, cutting, grinding, they're not given the right equipment.
Look, eye protection's not face protection. Face protection's not eye protection. But if you're going to wear face protection, guess what you got to wear underneath it?
Eye protection.
Eye protection. And I see that commonly where we got the face protection on, but we don't have the eye protection. Or the other thing I see a lot, James getting old. James can't see. James wears glasses, right? I've actually worn glasses for a long time, but I've gotten to where I wear contacts, but now I got to wear readers with my contacts.
You gotta use the cheaters.
So
people use their glasses and they think they're safety glasses, and they're not.
They put a side shield on them, but they still have the non-Z87 lens. This is going to explode in your face, right? So, hey, however you go about it, some companies will give you a stipend for getting corrective lenses that also have the protective Z87 lenses in them with the appropriate side shields. But you know, I like my eyes. I don't know about y'all, but
That's
eye
right. That's
protection,
right.
not face protection. Last one's this: machinery and machine guarding.
That's right. Where I see it the most, James, is people remove things for maintenance and they don't put it back. And they're operational with machines without the guards on. It's easier to maintain a machine, get in there. It's quicker for the work. And or they have old machines that never had guards and they weren't retrofitted.
I see the same thing, you know, all the time. I'll say this: if you have insomnia, break out subpart O, machine guarding, over in the general industry standard and just start reading. If that doesn't put you to sleep, nothing will. But machine guarding is super important. The implementation of machine guarding has saved countless limbs, fingers, people's lives, right?
Mhm.
So if you're operating a facility, do a machine guarding assessment, particularly if you're a legacy company that's been here for years and years and years and years. A lot of this machinery didn't come with guards, or somebody, like you said, removed the guard and it's become the normalization of deviance, if you will, right? I've been working in 10 years. It never even had a guard on it because we removed the guard like in 1998 and nobody put it back on.
Right.
So,
And everybody, it just became the way we do things, right?
so do a
So
machine guarding assessment. And if you don't know how to do that, that's okay. I'm not the best in machine guarding assessments. I mean, I can
get
point out the
somebody who
obvious,
is.
but get somebody qualified to come in and do a comprehensive assessment for machine guarding before somebody gets sucked into a machine.
Okay. Well, that was number 10. And we're a little long-winded today, so I just want to, I just want to say that we should keep an eye on these things. But remember, these that are on the top 10, they're almost always on the top 10. And I'm going to say, if you're going to look at these, falls number 1, it relates to 4 or 5 things on this list: respiratory protection and HAZCOM, big things. All of these things, if you take a good eye to these hazards, and these citations that are being put out there, you should start getting your safety program in shape. I mean,
You know,
these are the things that we're seeing with serious injuries and fatalities.
so, as someone who represents a lot of companies that have run afoul of OSHA during certain types of inspections, right? What do I do? Where do I start? A lot of our very popular episodes and some of my speaking engagements with Veriforce Strategic Advisory Board member Brent Kettlecamp from over at Ogletree and Deacons. We always have people come and show up and say, how do I prepare for an OSHA inspection? Start right here.
Yeah.
This is what they're
Yeah.
looking for. This is their top 10, right? They're coming out looking for these obvious violations.
And on
So,
our next episode, we'll talk about program inspections and some of the other things they're looking for.
absolutely. That'll be a
So
good.
with that, James, take us out.
Well,
What should they do?
thank you for all of you that come and listen to us. We're quickly approaching our 75th episode coming up, hopefully soon. Wow, I can't believe we've been around that long. But
Let's keep
look,
going.
we do this for you, the listener, and we hope you enjoy it. We hope you find value in it. Hey, go over there to Veriforce's YouTube page. Look for the podcast. Like the podcast. Smash the subscribe button. That way you'll know when a new episode has dropped. You can do the same thing over there on Spotify. Subscribe. I'm subscribed to our podcast every Tuesday, somewhere around lunch. I get a notification from YouTube and Spotify, another episode of the Risk Matrix.
And guess what we do? We both post it on LinkedIn, and as does Veriforce. So you can get to us a number of ways.
Absolutely.
But whatever you do, if you're listening to us, reach out. We're looking for guests. If you got something that's a hot topic in OSHA and you want to talk about it, or in safety or in risk, reach out to James or I, and maybe we can get you on this podcast and we can talk some shop with you. So with that, James, take us out.
Till next time, y'all keep bringing those workers home safe and roll tide.
Roll Tide.